So this one's going to be, hopefully, a shorter story. There's not much to it. I'm going to go ahead and read it to you guys. It is a 201, which is just a fighting shot, just no weapons involved kind of thing. And it says on June 28, 2016 at approximately 10:23 a.m., while supervising the recreation area, I observed inmates Bertel, Chippewa, myself, fighting with Kelly from 058 and the recreation area number 4. All inmates were observed striking each other with closed fists in the head and upper torso. Responding staff gave orders to all inmates to cease their actions, in which they all complied. All inmates were then restrained and escorted to be medically assessed without further incident. Now, 3 of us fought another race. And it really wasn't supposed to go down like that, for one. But I'll definitely share it. I will definitely share what happened and how it happened and all that. This was shortly after I did my stabbing in Beaumont. Well, these are the same 3. Or no, one of them is one of the guys that came with me. It was my cellie. And that's Chippewa. And he was in Idaho, bro. And a little crazy. He's a little crazy. He's down ass dude, but he done some shit like sold his soul to the devil, for starters. He's got a 666 on his face. Yeah, like he's the real deal. Like the real deal. Sold his soul to the devil's got a contract, knows his demon's name. I did some this is like super off subject, but I did a tarot card reading for him numerous times. And he was always like the fool. It was always like the fool or some upside down or something like that, man. It was always some like really weird inverted shit. But so yeah, we all went to the shoe. And after we got designated for SMU, they got rid of all of us and they sent us over to the medium. I think it was the medium. Medium or the low, one of the two, in Beaumont. And we've been down there for a couple months or whatever. We've been down there for like a month and a half, I don't know, something like that. It all bleeds together after a while, right? And it was during Ramadan. And the guy was Muslim. He was Muslim, and he was doing, the feasting, the fasting, not feasting. My bad. But he was fasting, and it was what was it? I want to say breakfast or lunch. One of the two. No, it was breakfast, because that's the only time that they can get food and eat it before the sun finishes rising or something like that. But anyways, they were passing out chow. And for those of us that have been to the shoes and the USPs and stuff, we know exactly what it's like. Even though everybody is in their cell, and for the most part, we don't have access to one another unless you're the same race and you guys are putting in the same ret cage, there's still a certain amount of respect that is required. And just because somebody does something that's supposed to be, convict, I guess for the most part, other convicts are supposed to at least not interfere, right? If somebody's going to do something like, bang on their door, take on the SORT team, shit bomb an officer, and some of it got on your fucking your cell door or something. There's certain times where you're not going to say anything. That's just, hey, these guys are wilding out, and not your monkey, not your circus. But there are going to be some rare instances where just because you're trying to do you and you're making a statement, and even though it is against the man, it doesn't mean that that gives you the right to make some of the moves that some of these guys make. Now, they were passing out breakfast, and sometimes, I think most of the time, 90% of the time, the COs, they'll go down one side, feed everybody all the way down one side, and then they'll get to the end and they'll turn around and they'll come down the opposite end and they'll feed everybody else. Something that happens a lot are people will jack the slot, right? The chuck hole. They'll jack the chuck, jack the slot. And what that does, what you do basically is you stick your arm out. You stick your arm out and you hold the slot. Basically, you take it hostage. Because the fact that they can't close the slot now, it's a security risk. And when it's a security risk, they have to call the lieutenant. And they also can't just, slam your arm. I mean, some do, some will. I've heard of it. You fuck around and pick the wrong motherfucker. They're just going to slam your arm in the fucking slot. And it's a big, thick chunk of steel about this big. It just, when it drops, it's so heavy on the fucking hinges. It's just like, it just hits hard as hell. So if somebody were outside of it and, they fucking pushed it up hard as fuck and hip checked it at the same time, they'll do some damage at the very least. You'll get your arm hurt. Not unless you're like a big guy with a big arm and shit. But for the most part, they're not supposed to touch you, But if you're trying to get somebody's attention, if you got something that you're supposed to have coming, or they're fucking around with you, or you're just trying to, rock the boat, you can jack the slot. But do not jack the slot if everybody has not eaten yet. And that was the issue. That was my issue. Don't get me wrong. The guy had coming what he had coming. I got that. And I supported it for a couple hours that he had the slot. But we're all fucking hungry. This is the shoot. We don't have, commissary like that to eat back here. I don't even think we got commissary other than like some hygiene and shit. But yeah, like that's our only source. That's the only thing we have to look forward to. That's it. That's the only way that we are able to tell what time of day it is. Like that's the increments of our fucking day. We want to eat when it's time to eat. The same way you want to eat and you want to get whatever you got coming, but he jacked the slot and he was probably about 25% at the beginning of the tier. So that means 75% of us have yet to eat. So he jacked the slot, right? And he's going all, whoop-de-whoop with the fucking CO and stuff. They're going back and forth. And the CO is like, I don't care. Jack the slot. I'll just come back in an hour, and see if you still want to keep playing this game. And he did. He left. And then he come back, and then, they start mouthing off to each other again. And he left again. And he was purposely, because everybody was like, hey, what's up? Finish feeding the rest of us. Like, what the fuck? And he's like, nah, just because he's got his arm in this slot, I can't open any more slots. It's a security risk. So until he, stops acting up, they're going to do that. They're going to pitch you guys against each other. So like I said, this went on for at least a couple hours, 2 or 3 hours. It was like 10 o'clock, 10:30 by the time I had had enough. And I jumped down off the bed, and I walked over to the door. And you got to get on the ground if you want your voice to carry. You're going to have to get on the ground because it has the biggest amount of space that isn't, everything's so goddamn flushed up and cornered like it, it's hard to get pieces of fucking paper through some of these doorways and shit. So, yeah, I come over there and there's, a usual amount of talking back and forth and joking and shit talking and stuff. And to be respectful, the first thing you say is excuse me on the tier, That's like definitely probably some West Coast shit. That's like the first place that I heard it. I heard homies doing that, Southsiders and shit. Especially they do a roll call. You know, they do a roll call in the morning and they do a roll call at night, and they'll make sure that they don't interrupt anybody first and foremost. You know, so there's always a certain amount of respect. So that's what I did. I got down and I said, "Excuse me on the tier." I said, "Hey, who's got the slot?" And right away, he's on the door. I mean, he's already in the fucking slot. So, I mean, he answered right away. You know, he was like, "Yeah, I got it. What's up?" And I'm like, "Who is that?" And he's like, 222. Why, what's up? And I said, "Hey, man." I said, "I don't mean to get into your business." I was like, "But Jack," I said, "dude, you need to fucking let him finish feeding the rest of us. And when he comes back to pick up the trays, jack the slot then." I said, "You got all of us fucking waiting on you to decide when we can eat." And he's like, hey man, I ain't trying to hear all that. He's like, "This ain't got nothing to do with you. Mind your own business. I'm doing me over here, this and that." And I was like, "Nah, motherfucker." I was like, "You got me fucked up." I said, "This has everything to fucking do with me because I'm waiting on you to decide when I can eat. Fuck that." He's like, "What you want to do? What are you saying? What are you trying to say?" I was like, "What are you trying to say?" He's like, "Man, I'm in 222, man. I go out to rec every day, blah, 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 blah." I'm like, "Okay then. Sign up for rec." And he's like, "I'll be out there. I'll be out there." I'm like, "Bet." I said, "Say no more. We got nothing else to talk about. I'll see you out there." And that was it. I got off the door and, you know, we had all signed up for rec. Everybody signs up for rec, you know. Not everybody, but mostly everybody. Everybody who's willing to jack a slot and get on the fucking door and check somebody for jacking the slot, we're going to sign up for rec, right? And my boy Chippewa, he was like, he had a razor blade and stuff, and he was all like practicing putting it in his mouth and stuff. He was like, "Man, should I go out there and fucking cut him?" I'm like, "Nah, man. Nah, we're just gonna rough him up." I said, "We're just gonna rough him up. You know, him and Celly, they want to bang, they want to get down. You know, they want to be crazy. We could do that." I said, "We could do that. We ain't gotta be, you know, trying to stab nobody and fucking. You know, we're already fucking shipped to SMU. You know, we're already fucking getting hit hard for that." And he was like, "That's why it don't even matter." You know, he's like, "Fuck it, let's do it." And I'm like, "Nah, man, don't do that." I was like, "He just needs to be roughed up a little bit, man. He doesn't need to be completely, you know, disfigured." Chippewa was ready. Chippewa was ready. He didn't give a fuck. He wanted to fucking seriously hurt this dude. And I wasn't going to let him. Not like that anyway. You know, I get what he's doing. I understand it and all that. And I can support it, but I can't support it beyond a certain point. Especially when you're not being considerate. I offered you an alternative that would have still gave you the leverage that you have right now, but it would also take into account everybody else's needs at that time. And yeah, this is the thing about it too, man. Like nothing, nothing is secret. You know, the COs, they know what's going on. They hear everything. They know everything. And guys are, you know, sliding them kites and shit. They're letting them know everything. They're giving them the whole rundown. So it's not like they're ever not aware, you know. And if they don't like you, they will get you hurt. And they overheard it. They knew exactly who he was, who was talking, and they knew exactly who I was because I and my group of guys were, you know, like we came from the USP, fucking life flighted somebody out of there, and we're in like the fucking the low, or I think it was the medium or the low shoe, but basically we were guests and we were kind of high profile guests. We were SMU bound, so everybody there that they're all in the shoe for petty ass shit. So the COs knew exactly who we were. And when rec time came, they brought my boy Birdtail out, and they put him in there. And then they brought me and my celly out. And me and my celly, we come in and we take our shirt off and everything, and we had I think Crocs on. Yeah, we had Crocs at the time. And here comes old boy and the celly. And like we're thinking, I'm almost convinced that they have to come down this center walkway, and the walkway to all the rec cages comes right down the middle of a big four-way cube of different rec cages. So coming down the middle, he can go to any one of the four, and we won't know until he stops. And so we're like, he's either gonna take him to one of the first two, or he's gonna take him to the left over here. There's no way he's gonna bring him to our cage. Like they would never house or try to wreck two different races together, ever. And sure enough, they turned his ass my direction, and they have like this separate enclosure so that you can at least get your cuffs off first before they open the rec cage. It's literally like a fucking like the release the hounds type shit. Like like you're gonna be ready. You're gonna at least be able to get out of your cuffs without getting sucker punched. And he goes in, and his celly was behind him. And he gets up to that same little area where him and his celly are about to be locked in so they can get uncuffed together. And he refuses. He's like, no, I'm gonna go back. And the cop was standing looking at him like, are you for real? And he's like, yeah, man, I don't want to. He's like, I don't want to wreck no more. He's like, man, get your ass in there. And he's like, nah, man, take me back. He's like, get the LT. I don't want to go to wreck no more. They're like, all right. And they turn around and they walked him off. And we're looking at old boy now, the one who started all this shit, because now he's by himself. And we're thinking he's gonna ask too. He's gonna ask to go back. And I could tell he wanted to. He probably wanted to. Probably should have. But you can't. Once you push the situation that far, you got. It's like, what do? You've already been the loudest one on the tier. You're jacking slots. You're making a big fuss over here in a fucking medium joint where these guards ain't on that kind of shit. They're not on that type of time. You're doing too much. You're taking advantage of a lower security playing field. So now you have the option of either putting your money where your mouth is, or following your celly back to the cell. And he decided not to. So I kicked both my Crocs off, and I looked at Birdtail and I said, "Hey, Birdtail," I said, "Hey, bro, this ain't got nothing to do with you." I said, "Okay." I said, "You don't got to get in it." And he was like, "Oh, okay." Birdtail, he's like a big taller bro. He's from Montana. Bless his little soul. He's like one of them kind of bigger, friendlier. Hey, he put in work. He'll put in work. I got nothing but respect for him. But he was just kind of one of them bros. Everybody's kind of jokes with all the time. Jokes on, teases and stuff. And he's just kind of always smiling. And everybody knows. Everybody knows the archetype that I'm talking about. And he was just like, "Okay, bro. All right, that's cool." And I turn around and I look over at, I think his name was like Tweety, right? Tweety Bird or something like that. And he was a little shorter than me, but he's a big boy, real big boy. And as soon as they opened that gate, he came fucking running in and he was bouncing and he was ready to go. And I'm like, what's up then, man? I said, what you want to do? I said, you want to go head up? I said, are you trying to bang with both of us? And he was like, no, I want to see you. He's like, I want to see you. And I'm like, yeah, I figured that. I'm the smallest one here. But I am also the one who started this. He started this. I started this, So I'm like, all right, cool. And then fucking Chippewa just stepped forward and started busting him. And then before I could even say anything, here comes fucking Bertel. He's like, he comes running in from the side and starts clocking him. And now I'm like the odd man out. And I'm like, damn, I feel dumb as hell now. I can't just stand here and watch, So I go running over there. And honestly, we just punched him up. Like, we just socked him up pretty good. Gave him a fat lip, bleeding out the nose. I mean, we didn't do him bad. Not bad like that. I felt bad about the whole situation to begin with. It's like I don't want it to go that way. I didn't intend for it to go that way or go that far, but you just got bullheaded guys, including myself. But the show must go on, right? The shoe, they need their pound of flesh. Too much talking has taken place to do anything less. But yeah, they stood there and they watched. The SEALs watched us punch them up for about 60 seconds. Maybe 60 seconds. And the whole time, everybody, like every other cage, were black guys. And they were going off. They were going off. Calling us all types of shit. And, it's like nobody wanted to keep race out of it, for one. Right away, they were like, oh yeah, this is going to follow you. We're everywhere. We're everywhere. It's going to follow you. No matter where you go, you're going to have to watch your back, this and that. And then, like, the very next day, one of these other black guys must have pissed one of these other COs off because they put him in our rec cage. And, like, we were like, we're not going to do anything to him, but he was talking shit the day before. And I remember exactly, he was right next to us and he was looking up, he was looking at me, he was like, that's fucked up, man. That's fucked up. You didn't have to do him like that, man. You guys didn't have to do him like that. You could have saw him head up, this and that. And I'm like, look, dude, it is what it is. It is what it is. And they brought him into our rec cage. And he came right up to me and shook my hand. It was like, hey man, I was just in my feelings. I was kind of heated. I didn't mean none of that. You know what I'm saying, And I'm like, we're good, man. We're good. I'm not, I'm not out for blood like that. I was like, you're good, relax, because I could tell he's the only black dude standing in a cage of like 5 natives. They clearly put him in here to get hurt. And he was nervous. He was real nervous, and he stood on that fence next to his homeboys the whole time. And some of my guys, they were standing there like, should we get him? And I'm like, no, man, no. Man, we had some other guys that were they were in there with us. His name was Joey. It was a SAC, right? Soldiers of the Aryan Circle. But I'm pretty sure it was Joey. Crazy dude, right? Crazy dude. Got completely tatted, fully fucking shirted out, big ass swastika on his back stuff. It's got a sack on him. I'm almost positive his name is Joey, but they butchered the fuck out of somebody right in front of us. And first they seen us. Who did we get? We got somebody. I think it was him. Then they got somebody, and then we got somebody because they put some, I forget what he was. I don't even think I asked. They put some random like solo dude in the rec cage with us, and everybody in the other rec cages was like, hey man, That's free rec right there. And we were like, oh. They're like, yeah, that's free rec. He's from this yard. And they're like, he's a piece of shit. And we're like, fuck, like we don't know, we can't confirm, but at the same time, we can't take the chance, you know, and you know, it's just one of those things. It's just one of those things where what would be said about you for not doing anything is worse than just putting hands on this dude and never seeing him again. Because obviously they're on some bullshit. They get on bullshit in the shoes, man. I don't know if people know that or not. Like in California, they're gang members. Their guards are gang members, and they put guys in there with rivals to see how long they'll last. They'll bet on them, or they'll just punk them. They'll punk them out, in front of everybody. They'll take them up to the fucking, take them up to the cage full of rivals, and they're like, "You want to go in there? You want to go in there, or you want to go back? I'll take you back. We can go back right now." And then it's like, guys, they bite the bullet. They go in there. They get tuned up, and they get stabbed up. One of my native bros got stabbed up. He was a youngster out of Arizona. I think he was like Pima or something like that, or Mojave or something like that. But yeah, they put him in there, full of red cage, full of guys that couldn't walk the yard anymore. Natives that we jumped off the yard. They put a chief that was in good standing in there with them, and he was like, "Fuck that! I wasn't gonna say no. Fuck that. Look like a fucking. What do I look like? We're like, damn, bro. Like you got heart, bro. You got fucking heart. But nobody's gonna know what they will or won't do until they're in that situation. You can talk all the shit everybody wants to talk, all you want. Oh, I would do this, I would do that, and it's like you don't know when it's there, when it's happening, when people are looking at you, and this might be the last time you draw breath. You don't know. Nobody does. But he was in the shoe with us. And this was in the USP still, as a matter of fact. We were in the shoe in the USP. And all these white boys, we watched, I could tell, for those of us who've been down a long time, we can tell when there's a stillness or a quietness. It's just an unusual, I guess you could say, the beat, right? The pulse. People can tell when there's something in the air. You'll see one guy, he'll lean over and he'll whisper something so slight that you don't even see their lips move, and it's in passing. And then you'll see that individual, he'll go over there and he'll kind of like nod somebody over, and they'll walk by, then you'll see them kind of pass something through the fence, and then you'll see someone go over somewhere else and they're getting ready to work out, and you see them grab their shirt off the ground funny, like they're trying to keep something concealed. And then I forgot about it, right? I had noticed that Joey and all these guys, they were getting somebody who was on the list, and there was 2 cages of them side by side, so they were able to get weapons to each other. And they were setting up to do burpees. They were working out, and I watched Joey. He goes over there and he puts his towel down. They fold it into like threes, the long way or whatever, and they lay it down. But when he laid it down, I saw him tuck something underneath. It could have been anything. It could have been his dope. It could have been a knife. It could have been his glasses. I don't know. Who knows? I just noticed it, and obviously I'm not gonna, what is that? I looked over, I glanced at it, and I looked away because we were all working out ourselves, all of us natives. And that youngster, the young bro, he hadn't really seen nothing like that yet. And a lot of us, we've already either seen it, participated in it, sat right by it, whatever. So we're pretty desensitized to this kind of shit already. And what ended up happening was Joey was, he was going in tandem with the guy that he's going to get. And there's like 2 or 3 other rows of them, and they're all, one side goes down, and when they come up, the other side goes down, and they do their little routine or whatever, and so it's in tandem. And the dangerous part of that is when they come up, you're going down in front of them. So you're breaking eyesight. They're in a blind spot. They're ahead of you. They're above you. You can't see them. And they let this guy go for most of the workout. And he goes down. And as soon as he goes down, I happen to look over and I seen Joey threw the towel to the side and he picked up that knife and he started. And I mean, like, getting him. I remember the guy like fell back on his back and he just, tried to kick his feet towards Joey. And Joey was like, he was leaning on his feet because he was pressing his feet up against his stomach. And he was hitting him all in the legs. He'd already got him like in the face and the neck and the side. And the dude was just like, he was just kicking, and there was another guy that was trying to get him too. And you watch like, you can feel the helplessness. Like, that's the last place you want to be, on your back at somebody's mercy. And you got to worry about them and then another guy. Like, what are you going to do? I mean, he was just getting fucking stuck. And nobody is coming, nobody is screaming. Nobody's yelling help, nothing. He's just like, what did I do? What did I do? And Joey was like, you know what you did? You know what you did? We gave him shit about that for so long. You know what you did? It was fucked up. But most of us can take a glance at it and look away. And most of us did. We kept working out. But the youngster, he looked over and he just stopped. He got stuck, right? It just sucked him in. And I don't blame him for that, because anytime you see that for the first time up close like that, it's gonna pull you straight in. It's like a magnet, like you're just gonna like tunnel vision in on it, and just your mind is gonna soak up every aspect of it, and that's what he did. And I called him. I called his name, and he kind of snapped out of it, and he looked back at me. And I said, "It's your set." And he was like, "Oh, okay." And then he started working out, and he looked at the rest of us, and he realized that none of us stopped. None of us stopped working out. Not even enough to miss up the pace. He was the only one that paused and just stared. Then they come running in, and when they come running in, we just all backed up and we stood against the wall and just watched, because we got our own cage and stuff. But yeah, they came in and just maced everybody up, and Joey was like trying to stuff the fucking. He kicked the blade in half, snapped it in half, then he threw it down the fucking gutter in the middle of the rec cage. And I tell you what, they were in no fucking hurry. No hurry whatsoever to get that guy. They cuffed everybody else up first, and then they left him there to bleed for like another 3 minutes before they came in there with a fucking gurney. And they were just not in any rush, like they act like it's a bother. It's a fucking annoyance for them to have to come in there and patch you up because you're fucking not welcome anymore. Yeah, that shit's crazy. That's why I say it's like you see shit like that, and it becomes really hard to trust people, just turning your back to them for even a moment. You see people get got in really extraordinary ways where it's just like, that's fucked up. I watched people run in on people while they were taking a shit, and ever since then, I never took a shit with both of my fucking feet in my pant legs while I was in prison again. I took one foot out of both, pant legs, so that if I ever got ran in on, I'm not going to be tripping over my shit. My shit's going to be fucking hanging and swinging and everything. I fought, I fought my very first mission I went on in state prison. I had to fight somebody who was butt ass naked. That's another story for another time. But I just wanted to make a short one, touch on something. I know that the other one was a little bit more of just kind of a rambling, just kind of sharing some of the thoughts that I have throughout the day. But I know people want to hear and see the good stuff, and this is one of them. But I'll holler at everybody later. If you like what you hear, be sure to like and comment, subscribe, stick around, watch me grow. Take it easy.